I'm so excited because we are going to have a wonderful conversation with our guest speaker today, Johanna Wagner. Johanna is a birth and postpartum doula as well as a childbirth educator. She's also the founder of midwives, an incredible group of wonderful, supportive doulas, but also a supportive network that helps mamas and daddies in different stages of their parenthood, while they are conceiving or when they are preparing for the arrival of their little one, during birth as well as after that. And she has created all these wonderful groups that are actually supporting as a peer group and meeting up face to face. I can't wait to hear more from Johanna on how she works as a doula and a childbirth educator and what her values are and how she brings that work that she is doing in a wonderful, harmonious support amongst the couples, but also amongst the doctors, the clinics, and the nurses. We have been collaborating with Johanna and her wonderful team for very long years, and it's so great to have her here today. So if you ever wanted to hear more or learn more about what a doula does, as well as a childbirth educator, and how she's supporting families not only through conception and pregnancy, but also throughout birthing and postpartum, then this is the show you want to listen in. And also feel free, if you know of any friend that could benefit from today's show, please share it with them and enjoy the show. Okay, wonderful. I'm so excited to have you here, Johanna. I couldn't wait for today to happen, for us to catch up after we had already like some really great conversations before. So welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And so I just wanted to launch with the very first question, just like, can you share what your morning ritual is when you start your day to really get ready for your day?
Okay, well, that's a difficult one. Definitely, it starts with a cup of coffee. Because I'm always on call as a doula, the first thing I do is actually check my messages to see if any of my clients need immediate support. And that will then allow me to plan my day around it, whether they need an urgent home visit and things like that. And only when everything is clear, this is typically when I go into nature. I like to do a 5 to 7K hike in the morning, followed by some strength training. And yeah, that's basically how my days start, because if I don't do it in the morning, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yes, I would do my exercises in the morning as well. And it's so great to start your day in nature, isn't it?
Best. It's so beautiful just to be surrounded. I will miss that when we leave Singapore, I think, the jungle and all the sounds, and it's just magical to be there.
Yes. Yeah, it truly is. And I guess the temperature is much nicer early morning than in the afternoon, right? Anyway.
It's, very true.
Yes. So I know you have many hats on. I know that you are a passionate cook and you are an amazing networker. You have the head of a mom, of course. You have the head of a doula, of a holistic practitioner. So can you tell me a little bit more about your background so that our listeners get to know you a little bit better as well?
Yeah, that's amazing. You actually hit the nail on the head. I've worn many different hats, and I'm Austrian by background, married to an Austrian as well. But for most of my adult life, I've actually lived abroad. So we only go back to our home country for the summer and winter holidays. And I started out studying modern languages. I studied French, Spanish, and English at school, at university. Then I always worked in PR, marketing, advertising for a very long time. And as our family was growing, there came a point where I decided, okay, these crazy hours in advertising, they no longer work for me, because I want to spend time with my kids and I want to be flexible with being able to help them with homework and taking the summer off, for example. So I decided to go back to uni. And I studied biomedicine, I studied naturopathy, acupuncture, herbalism, and it led me to a total 8 years of studying before I actually ended up in Singapore, where I mainly do doula work. And that is because of the restrictions Singapore has with some of the complementary healthcare is very heavily regulated, and schools from abroad are basically not taken seriously. So a lot of what I did in my practice in London, I couldn't actually practice in Singapore. And I ended up becoming a doula.
Wow. Wow.
And so that was really interesting because I didn't know what a doula was, to be quite frank, but I was doing workshops for a doula agency and they figured out I speak lots of languages and I could support their expat clients. So I did the training, which took me another year or so, and I just loved it. It's such a beautiful job, such a privilege to be walking alongside these couples, seeing them turn from a couple into a family and sometimes facing challenges, but overcoming challenges. And ultimately, birth is a very happy moment always. So I'm super privileged to be able to do this work.
Yes, yes, yeah. And it must be so rewarding too, right? From the beginning and then seeing like how this baby bump is growing and then eventually you're holding their baby in your arms.
Actually, it is really, really magical.
Yes. So you just shared about like your journey. Thanks so much. Wow. I didn't know actually that all the studies that you've done in the UK weren't recognized in Singapore. Which is how life is, right? It's twisted and turns. And luckily we got you as a doula in Singapore then. I remember actually being in touch with one of your colleagues as well for my birth preparation. I just wondered, can you share with us maybe a little bit, like from when do you start to actually be in touch with the parents to be like, what happens? Like,
so that is actually different every single time because I do have some moms who already contact me when they're trying to conceive. So I'm part of the journey all the way along and help them with guidance, which is basically what a doula does. Just help them figure out what their options are, what choices they can make, and so on. But I would say most clients wait until their pregnancy is sort of established, when they've had a big scan at around the 13, 14-week mark. That's when they typically start reaching out. Some leave it till much later, and then it's often hard to accommodate them because I can only take so many clients in a month so that I don't have any clashes. And obviously I have to take care of myself as well and of my own family. So but typically around the 20-week mark at the latest is when they get in touch. And then we walk with them all the way through, being with them at birth, obviously. We then see them in the postpartum period as well. For about 3 weeks after is when our scheduled meetings end. But then they tend to reach out even years after their baby is born with questions that they might have in any sort of form. The doula is always the first port of call, is what I find.
Okay.
Especially at times when a doctor's office is closed and, they have a scare at like 9 o'clock in the evening and they're like, what do I do now? So the doula is typically who they call, and then we can reassure them or tell them, look, this needs to be addressed and you should better go speak to your care provider or go to the hospital.
Yes, yes. So as far as I know, there is also like a role called like midwife. So how does your role differentiate from a midwife? Can you maybe explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So doulas and midwives are very different and very similar at the same time. A doula is just there to support you throughout pregnancy, at birth, and in the postpartum period. But we don't play a medical role, meaning we don't diagnose, we don't make decisions for our clients either, but we are part of the team that the client has chosen. And we're there primarily to help them give them information, to help figure out what they want. And of course, I've supported over 400 births. So I've seen, we see a lot. We've seen a lot of complicated issues. We've seen, so we basically can guide a client and we know what is common and what is not common. And we see different births and pregnancies all the time. But we don't play a medical role. So I don't do vaginal examinations. I don't read a CTG. I don't do anything like that. But if I see anything that is out of the ordinary, I can point my client to, okay, you should probably consider seeing your care provider and telling them about this. In the birth itself, what's great about a doula is that you have someone that is really familiar with you. Like, we've established a relationship during pregnancy. So you know that there's going to be the one person in the room who's going to cheer you on, who you can trust, who you're familiar with, who knows what you want. So that is the benefit of having a doula, I guess. Midwives, as we know them from, for example, Switzerland or Austria or Australia and the UK, that role doesn't exist here in Singapore. Singapore is very medicalised. So your care is primarily done by an OB-GYN, an obstetrician gynecologist. And in the hospital itself, you only have nurses. You have nurses with some obstetric training, and they definitely play an important role doing all the medical tasks, but they also don't have the same kind of authority as a midwife in the UK would, where she would be assessing and dealing with the situation. But here the nurses are strictly responsible for following the doctor's orders, and they themselves have no remit to speak of. So this is a little bit different, and I think this is where the doula comes in, because on the day of birth, you don't know who you're going to have in the room. You have nurses that are not midwives and also don't have the time to sit with you and say, okay, well, why don't you try this and why don't you do that? They are basically responsible for so many different rooms, and they don't have the time to spend a lot of time with the client. The doctor comes in for the last 5 minutes. And so in between, there's this void where you're being left alone as a couple, often not knowing what is going on, what could I be doing? Like, it's a very unclear. Your husband is it's amazing, right? It's great to have your husband there, but they haven't ever seen birth before. They don't know what's going on. So it's often a little bit difficult for them to guide you. So the doula helps both the husband and the wife, or the partners, actually, I should say, because we don't just have, we have same-sex couples, for example, as well. So we help this couple basically figure out and support them in any way we can.
Fantastic.
Does that answer the question?
Yes, it definitely does. And thank you so much for sharing that, because what I really love when you said like that, you are not only supporting the birthing mama, but also the dad, because I think, or the partner, as you pointed out correctly, because I think there is so much that partners actually can do, but they very seldom know what they can do. And sometimes also they have maybe more a tendency to follow the medical guidelines.
Absolutely. They're definitely more, I'm paying this doctor, why wouldn't I, let's do what he says. But I think it's really funny to observe that when clients hire you, sometimes the husband is a little bit hesitant. And they're like, well, am I not good enough? Like, I can do all of this, right? And then at the end, after the birth, they're our biggest supporters. They're like, oh my God, I could never have done this without you. Because what we do is we help them play a more active and meaningful role in the birth process. We give them all the tools that they need to be fully present in the moment. And we give them breaks as well. That's a good thing to know. When birth is long, they can go and stretch their legs, they can have some lunch and come back refreshed.
Yes.
Good support for the partner too.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think one of the things that is on your checklist is also to have the snacks being brought along, isn't it?
Important. Birth is tiring. It can be tiring, and you definitely need fuel.
Yes.
Both the birthing woman as well as the partner and the doula. We definitely need plenty.
Absolutely. Now, I imagine, when you were saying that there is nurses there, then there is this the parents there, then the doula. So how can you ensure that all this is actually smooth operations and not creating any frictions, because I can imagine that the role of a nurse and the role of a doula can sometimes become, I'm not sure, I'm saying now the word competitive, but maybe this is the wrong word. How do you ensure that this is all being done in a good way, positive?
Yeah. So to start with, I would say it's all down to respect. You know, I have a lot of respect for the nurses, and I know very well where my scope of practice ends and the scope of practice of the nurse starts. So we're very clear. I think we have very clearly defined roles. And, you know, over the years, having worked in all the hospitals here in Singapore that have maternity wards and going there so often, like I support 4 to 5 couples in a month typically. So the nurses know me really well, and they have come to appreciate our presence because we take workload off them as well. With every question a client have, or maybe they only need an extra pillow, or maybe they need some water. That's, you know, situations where they would normally call in the nurse who's busy in another room. So we do a lot of the groundwork that they then don't have to take care of, which I think it alleviates their workload a little bit as well. I'm not saying every doula works really well with the nurses, but I really appreciate and respect them, and we work very well together.
That's so great to hear. And I think also, for how long have you been around now as a doula? Can you remind me again?
12 years. Yeah, 12 years. So it's been,
oh, wow.
been a while.
Yes, and I think with all these years, you've probably built up a reputation as well. Nurses know you, clinics know you, doctors know you too. They know exactly how you work. And so this respect that you said, like it's going both ways, right? I'm sure.
Yeah. And yeah, we've worked hard, I have to say, at gaining the trust of the care providers as well, because not everybody is familiar with a doula, and people have very wrong image of what we do and what we don't do. So it's over the years we've been able to clarify some of that, and some of the doctors are really, they actually recommend that the client hire a doula because they see that they have such better outcomes. The client is more happy, more comforted in the birth. They feel that they're being taken seriously. They feel more in control of what is happening and not just feel like things are being done to them. And I think that later when we talk about birth trauma as well, I think that's really important in this process. Because if you feel that you're out of control or that nobody is listening to what you want and what you're saying, then it becomes this roller coaster of very intense emotions that can be quite tricky in the period as well. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's fantastic if the doctors actually advise the couples to hire a doula, because I think that's the best setup you can give to parents to be, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I was wondering, in terms of like decision-making process or tools or anything, have you seen some resources or tools that are working better than others? Or like, what should a couple that is thinking about hiring a doula or not take into consideration?
That's an interesting one. I mean, you mean, how can we help them make the decision that hiring a doula is right for them?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I think every couple deserves a doula, I have to say. Because the thing is, you don't know what you don't know. I think a lot of people go into birth a little bit unprepared. And if some do classes, some do hospital classes that are not very helpful, I find, because they just make you into a compliant patient. Doctors are often not very good at explaining what is going to happen or walk you through different scenarios. They often like to take charge, and that's great. If a client likes a birth that is actively managed by their care provider, that is a choice, and could be absolutely the right decision for someone. But most clients will only find out when they're in the thick of things that things are maybe not exactly the way that they had thought they would be. And so that's quite difficult to navigate birth, which can throw so many different things at you and can take so many different paths and so many different scenarios, and you just cannot prepare for that. And so that is good to have someone next to you who can who's seen it all, who can walk you through the different options that you have. And I think that's why every client could benefit from such a support. I think, especially when like I say, especially when you want to birth your way rather than just following your doctor's recommendations.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And is that true for couples who are expecting their number one as well as their number two? Or do you see different scenarios between a firstborn and baby number two?
Yeah, that's really a really good question as well. Actually, it is the same. It is the same need is there for a second, third, or fifth baby. It doesn't really matter. I had one client who hired me for her 14th baby. And she really had the 14th baby, and she had really seen it all from twin birth, cesarean section, she has a home birth, a very diverse kind of scenario. And she said to me, I could never do it without a doula. And my husband could never do it without a doula either. So, they really saw the benefit of having someone next to you. So no, I don't think it makes a difference, especially, a first birth is often quite long. Second babies can come quite fast, but that also means, knowing when it's time to go to the hospital and things like that. They often need that guidance as well. But again, every couple is different. And if they're quite confident doing it on their own, sometimes we even do stuff like a remote support. So I just had a birth that I supported where the mom was giving birth in Munich. And they basically wanted guidance on, when to go in. And then baby was born an hour and a half upon arrival at the hospital. So,
oh my goodness. Wow, that's amazing. That's truly amazing.
not the same support, I think, but it is still, it's good to have someone in the wings who knows.
Yes. And how would that work out if those couples that have maybe decided already up front that they want to opt for a C-section?
Yeah.
Still makes sense for them to hire a doula, or is this then completely medically engineered?
It depends. So my last two births were scheduled cesareans.
Oh,
yeah. So I do support that quite often.
mm-hmm.
And again, I think the need is there because the doctors often don't talk about the details. They don't talk you into, like, I've been at so many C-sections myself that I really know what's going on in the room, so I can help the client understand what is going to happen on the day, like literally blow by blow. When you're going to the hospital, the shaving is going to happen, a lot of things that people don't typically expect. And also in the OT itself, where is everybody located? Am I going to see my baby? What are my options? Can I have my baby skin to skin? Which hospital do I choose to get a better chance of actually putting the baby on and latching on in the recovery? So the hospital protocols and doctors' protocols are so different, so that even in a cesarean section, it is important that you know what your choices are. And to be guided. And then on the day, we can be there and facilitate skin to skin with the father in the postnatal room while the mom is still in recovery. And then we help with the first latch, and we tell them what to expect and what to look out for in the next 24 hours until I see them again. And then the support after birth is pretty much the same as for any birth, whether surgical or whether it was a vaginal delivery, because they all have the same needs in terms of baby care and postpartum healing and so on and so on. So.
That's so amazing. It's so good to hear that actually you can offer your support to those with C-section as well. Now, one is those couples that schedule for a C-section, but very often I also hear the stories about them really preparing mentally, emotionally, and having this dream of having a natural birth. And then things take up quite fast sometimes, and then they are almost forced into like an emergency C-section. How can you support couples during such a a turn of events that is quite fast sometimes.
Yeah. So I think it all starts prenatally, actually. Talking about when we talk about birth preferences, which some people call a birth plan, we talk about all the different things that could happen. So, for example, we even talk about scenarios where a medical induction might be necessary. And what does an induction look like? Inductions always have a higher risk of the birth ending in a C-section. And the reason is that we have a lot of medication on board and we don't know how the mother and the baby will react. And so that is typically where emergency C-sections happen. So we help the client understand that from the get-go. And we always talk about the fact that birth can take different turns, that we don't know what to expect, that we can make a plan in our head, but we need to be really flexible to change course, because sometimes what's good for the mother, meaning, for example, a lovely water birth and so on, might not be what the baby needs. The baby might have different needs, and the water birth might not be safe for them in this instance. So we always need to be flexible and able to change course. And I think that is where we play a really important role, to say, it's okay. You know, we had this plan A, but now baby needs something different. And now we need to change course. And now here are all your options again. What do you feel most comfortable with? Is this a route you want to go down? Do you need more time to think about it? Do you want to use some of your relaxation techniques to sort of get your head in a good space so that you go into this surgical birth with ease and with comfort? So lots and lots of things that we can do, even in these emergency or quite difficult, challenging scenarios as well.
Yes, and I'm so glad to hear that you are actually helping out with these tools, because in my work, when I see them postpartum and they tell me that they experienced a birth trauma, is usually based on the fact that they were forced from changing from a plan A to a plan B, and they were not given any choices.
Mm-hmm.
That's how birth trauma can be developed, actually. So you mentioned birth trauma before. How is it in your field? Like, what else are you seeing that can cause or contribute towards birth trauma?
So I think not being heard is the number one. Feeling that things are being done to me and I have no choice in the matter. Another thing is not having the trust, like not having the right team, and having the feeling that maybe your doctor or the nurse or someone is sabotaging your decisions a little bit, you know, and they're not listening to you. They're making, they're not trusting that you can do this, what you have achieved, what you have set out to do. So I think that is the worst thing. When I have to say, we don't see that very often. Typically, we work with clients, or we help the client understand which care provider would be a good option for them, and what kind of setting would be a good option for them as well, so that they can basically eliminate the risk of certain things from the start. But again, we don't have just one doctor isn't right for everyone, right? So we need to carefully match that to the client and see where they're at, and know, how can I say that? There's no one way to give birth. And as doulas, we support every type of birth, like whether you choose a surgical birth, a cesarean birth, or you choose a water birth or a hypnobirth or an induction or whatever it is that you're going to encounter. We are there to cheer you on and help you. We are not making decisions. I think I want to make that clear as well. So it's really important to understand that while we are there to help you navigate your options, we don't negotiate with the care provider. We don't say, no, this client can't have X, Y, Z. But it is more about letting the client understand what sort of questions to ask. And then they communicate with their care provider and they come to a compromise, or they understand what the care provider actually wants, and so that we're all on the same page. But I don't make decisions, and I don't diagnose, as I said earlier. I don't speak up. I don't go against the doctor's orders or the nurse's orders either. So we are basically just there to help manage the situation. I just thought that was important to understand as well.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's really important to understand. So your role is more like communicating to the couple, and then the couple would ultimately communicate to the nurses or the doctors. Is that correct?
Yeah, most of the time. I have to say, with the amount of experience that I have working with certain doctors and nurses, they include me in the conversation often, but it is always the client who makes the decision. And I never interfere with that.
Yeah. So what are the challenges that you can see that are the ones that come over and over again, that you can see really, wow, this is really a challenge that has been the more prominent one over all these years as working as a doula? Is the challenge more coming, like, could it be like from the doctor because the doctor has some expectations, or is it from the clinic, from nurses, or is it from parents that they might have certain expectations that are not met? Are you seeing any of these challenges that are?
Oh, that is such a big
question. Sorry.
I think generally speaking, I would say that I really trust that the caregiver and the nurses all have the client's best interest at heart.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't think that people are out there to get clients and sabotage their birth experience. I don't think that's the case. However, I think we have situations where if the client isn't clear on their care provider's protocols and the hospital's protocols, and their wishes go completely against all of that, then we have conflict in the room. And if you can sort that out prenatally, perfect. But if it happens in the birth, that can be really challenging, because you now have, when we talk about the hormones of birth, you have adrenaline in the mix, and then the oxytocin can't flow. And then everything becomes a little bit inorganic and can't really unfold itself as it should. So those are the trickiest situations, I would say. But even care provider and nurses aside, I think the biggest challenge for moms or for parents is often that they have to sort of take a step back, and we like to be in control, right? We always like to be able to steer the ship and know what's going on. And birth is very instinctive. I think birth is where we sort of have to follow our primitive brain a little bit more, and not try and manipulate anything, because that's not going to work. We need to trust our own bodies to do what they're meant to be doing, and then we're in the best place. We really need to go with the flow and find our labor state, basically, where we can operate at maximum efficiency. And so that can sometimes throw a spanner in the work when a mom is very set up on her specific views of wanting specific things that maybe she can't have in that situation, or that are not conducive to the birth. So being out of control or relinquishing control is often hard for some people.
I can imagine. Yes. Working as a fertility counselor, I can see very similar scenarios there as well, where you can control as much as possible, but then there is a certain moment in our work as fertility counselors when the embryo is being transferred back into the uterus, where it's out of control.
Yeah.
And I imagine, this is always a call for special circumstances as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So just talking of those that actually get the help of fertility assistants, like medical assistants in my work, I often see, and I'm not sure whether it's something that you can confirm from your side, Johanna, but it's something often that I see, like, because they have been so medically directed, sometimes not just for a couple of months, but for years. They have been going through all the testings. They have been going through different procedures to get their body ready. Finally, they have the embryo. And sometimes between starting the conception until they do the embryo transfer, we can have couples who have been going through a journey of 1.5 to 2 years. So these couples, when they get pregnant, what I can see is that they are very risk adverse. And for them, in their world, the safest to them means give everything into medical hands, which I'm not saying is wrong, but I'm just saying, like, with that, I would see more couples actually opting for a C-section.
Yes.
I'm not sure whether this is something that you are observing as well from your side.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely must have a better insight there because you have a broader client base there. But we support a lot of IVF parents, a lot of IVF pregnancies and births, and yeah, I think that there's a lot of work needed prenatally. Because I think the main issue is that this client who's gone through multiple rounds of IVF and often multiple miscarriages and so on as well, it is very tough to still trust your body to do what it's meant to do, right? You had issues conceiving and you sort of, you don't have that trust that you're able to do the birth, and then you opt for a C-section, which is often actually not the easiest choice. I have to say that as well, because there are some downsides to C-section as well. That some clients may not be aware of. So we talk about that prenatally, whether that is a good choice for them or whether they want to try the natural route. And often it's just about learning, finding your information, finding out what is actually happening in a birth. Like, how does my body support this process? And what can I do to positively influence it as well? So I think it's all about that knowledge. But totally, if a client decides that a C-section is a good option for them or is the best choice that they can make, then I fully, support that as well, as long as they've made an informed choice.
Yes. And I think it's like what you just said, like knowledge is empowerment. It's really about getting to know what your choices are. Absolutely. Yes.
Absolutely. And then there's so many things that you can do to prepare. And I see some couples who come out of this IVF journey that you've just explained, and they feel very driven in the pregnancy, and they feel very driven. They want to really support, really prepare, and they're using all the tools in the toolbox, whether it's psychological and having, the help of a counselor, or whether it is body work and enlisting, acupuncturists or chiropractors or osteopaths or whatever it is. They throw everything at it. And I love that, they're really taking charge, because that's what it's all about. You can't do that with fertility necessarily. If you're on the IVF journey, your hands are sort of tied. You're not the one who implants the embryo and so on. But now in pregnancy, you can really take charge and do so many different things to support the pregnancy itself, but also the birth. So I love when clients do that, and even more so when they do it as a couple.
Yes, and talking about the holistic view and the holistic approach of it, it's actually very much similar in IVF as well, because we would look into nutrition, we would look into acupuncture, we would look into like all kinds of different, like yoga, meditation, all kinds of different alternative therapies that can actually support their well-being, whatever the clients are open to. I often feel, I'm not sure about you, but I often feel that when it's about like for them to prepare for their well-being and they can like create that dream team around them, this is like where magic really happens. This is where I can see that things go into a flow. And I think because they know that they're in such good hands with the people that they are working with, that they can actually let go and trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And you need to make sure that you have people on your team that fully trust the process and trust you as well.
I was wondering, for those that you just mentioned, that sometimes they come to you and, you can already feel that there has been a lot going on, and maybe it took longer to conceive, and maybe also they experienced some losses before. Can you maybe share a little bit about your work that probably goes beyond or is included in the work as a doula when it comes to depression signs or just the signs of heaviness that you can pick up from the expecting parents or expecting mom? How do you deal with that, and how do you support them?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I'm obviously not a trained counselor, or I don't have any training in that area at all. So when I pick things up, I typically try and find a way to weave it into the conversation prenatally, that whether they are seeing someone or whether they are anticipating seeing someone later. So for example, if they share with me that they've got a history of depression, we always talk about, how things could come up through the birth or maybe in the postpartum period, to know what to look out for basically, and to reach out for help as soon as possible. And we connect them with the right people as well. There are lots of tools online, I guess, as well, finding the Edinburgh scale and things like that, that they can do questionnaires for themselves and figure out where they stand. And then they often reach out and say, look, I think sometimes even the husband, my husband could benefit from talking to someone after the birth. He's not been himself. And so it's often the partner actually that reaches out. I think in the first 3 weeks, there's so much going on that often the mom is in such a survival mode in terms of, getting enough sleep, getting the baby fed, getting the milk to come in, healing from the birth themselves, that often things like postnatal depression crop up a little bit later. Mm-hmm. The baby blues we often see, obviously, and when it goes beyond that, we reach out for help. But often it happens, we only discover it about a month in or so. And with some clients, we know previously, that there has been a history of this. And so we line up all the help that we can get from the very start. And so this is often not specifically speaking to a counselor, but making sure that the whole postpartum experience is set up in a way that they can actually heal, that they have enough support, that they have enough help. And that, I think, helps mitigate the risk a little bit as well. So, talking to them about setting themselves up for a better experience is typically what we do. And then we obviously have fantastic counselors here in Singapore. We're so lucky to have people like you guys, Counseling Connects. We have a lot of counselors in Singapore that are really specialized and focused on birth as well, which is even better. It's not generic, but they know exactly what they're talking about. They've lived it themselves. They've been specifically trained in that. So that's amazing. I don't think any other country has those resources that we have here.
Yeah, it's really, really amazing what we have in Singapore. Absolutely. What are your touch points after giving birth, Johanna? Can you walk us through a little bit? Like, how often would you still see these parents?
Yeah, so seeing in person, I typically have 3 to 4 postnatal appointments. These are home visits. The first one is actually at the hospital. And it's very much, so this is really interesting because in Singapore, it has a lot of good things, but where I think it's falling short is support in the postpartum period. They feel that the clients are not being visited by a health visitor. The clinic is not going to call to see how the baby is going and if your milk has come in and all these things. While we know that, even by just tweaking little things, we can have a much better experience. And when things go wrong, they can go downhill very fast. So basically, my engagement with my clients for the first 3 weeks of their baby's life and sometimes beyond is to check in with them every day. So I will ask questions like, what color is the poo? How do your breasts feel? How has the feeding been going? How often have you been up in the night? All these things where we basically then can see and fine tune and see when things are going downhill. And then we know, okay, we need another strategy, or we need to bring a professional on board, like a physiotherapist or a lactation consultant. And we can make sure that this happens timely, so the client isn't going down this path where there's going to be lots of follow-up issues, a cascade of kind of things that are going wrong. So that is the main role. But what we do as doulas in the home visits is everything from, helping with latching and with breastfeeding, helping them figure out whether the baby is on track, troubleshooting, bathing the baby, helping with baby care, umbilical cord, postpartum healing, and a lot of other things, pelvic floor rehabilitation, a lot of those really important topics we discuss with them.
Wow. Yes. And because you studied about herbs and everything as well, alternative ways, right, on how to support clients. How much of that can you still use in your work?
Totally. I mean, to be honest, in pregnancy, a lot of it is symptomatic treatment rather than anything else. So I am, in my colleague jokes that I've got a witch's cauldron, but I still make my own remedies from herbs, from powders, tinctures, and plants and so on. And I make, different potions and lotions for postpartum healing, for hemorrhoids, for GBS, for yeast infections, for a bunch of other things. So I very much still help in that way as well, which is great, I think, because now I've got this specialization on moms and small babies, and that is really quite empowering as well.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I was wondering, I came across a study, a meta-analysis that was based on 4 studies between 1996 and 2020, where the study actually showed that about 7 to 9% of new dads would experience postpartum depression. And the number for moms was between 8 to 17%. So the number for that actually quite surprised when I was wondering, in your work, have you observed anything like that as well, really happening with new dads, that they are going through a depression?
Absolutely. Depression and birth trauma.
Even birth trauma.
So I do see that. I mean, I was talking about earlier about how birth is so happy. It's always a joyous moment, but it is not always. So we do see more negative outcomes as well. And we see births that are a little bit rushed, and maybe the dads are in the corner and they're not really understanding what is going on. And there's not much communication happening between the hospital staff and the dad. And it isn't necessarily that the situation is traumatic in itself, but it is the interpretation of the dad, because he just sees everybody springing into action, and they don't have necessarily the knowledge to know whether this is a life and death kind of situation. They feel helpless. They don't know what to do. And they see their partner, and they think they want to protect them, but they feel very disempowered. And I think that is the main reason that I see, where then a mom might reach out and say, look, I think my husband needs help processing what happened. He's quite traumatized. He doesn't want, whenever I bring up another, having another baby, they sort of push me away, and they just won't have any of it. So we see that quite a lot, actually. And it's hard for guys. I really think that many of them, they don't necessarily have the network that some of us women do. And you don't necessarily talk about it in the pub, and you have to be strong for your partner, and you don't want to show them that you are sort of rattled by what you experienced. So that can be very, very tricky. So definitely we would hope that these moms and dads reach out and get the help that they deserve, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially after such an incredible transformation that they are going through already, right? Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned before, and I don't know whether I heard correctly, but you said like 45 births per month that you are...
Oh my God, no, I could never do this many.
Yeah. I just thought like, no, I must have picked up the wrong number here.
Yeah, no, it depends on the month.
So what's the number of?
Throughout my career, a good average was 4 to 5 births in a month. 4 to 5, not 45.
Here we go.
Yeah, at the moment, I've actually reduced that a lot. I'm only doing 1 birth per month because I need to focus on my family more. And so that is what I love, that I can be so flexible and say, you know, I need time to myself right now and I need to focus on other things. So I need to reduce my client load as well. Yeah. And yeah, 4 to 5 births a month, sometimes a little bit more. And you can only do that when you have really brilliant backup in the background. So I have a colleague who I'm in constant contact with, who knows about all my clients. I know about all of hers. So in case there is a need for someone to step in, I do have that support. But to be honest, it hasn't been necessary very often. I think in all the 400 or whatever births I've had, we maybe had 5 or 6 clashes. So it's very, very minimal. But yeah, we could never take 15 clients a month. That is just too much. Yeah.
Yes. Completely understand. Yes. And was there one, I guess, as you said at the beginning, it's always magical, right, when the baby arrives. But was there an event that really stuck maybe more with you, a special moment or a special environment?
So it is really funny because there are so many that teach you something.
Yeah.
You know, there's some births are just so unpredictable and so different from your normal textbook labor that you stand there wondering, oh my God, like I can't believe this just happened. And you look at the nurse and she looks at you and you're like, ow, you know. But there isn't one. But if there's one thing in my career, I think that I'm super proud of, I guess, or was very honored, is because that's how I interpreted your question. I hope that's okay.
Yes.
So in 2018, I was approached by a charity here in Singapore who was setting up a shelter for moms with an unsupported pregnancy. And we got together and we said, okay, how can we help as doulas? Like, what can we do for these clients? So these are moms who have a lot of abuse and trauma in their background. They have, maybe their family has said, okay, you're on your own, you got pregnant, you know, we're not supporting that. You need to terminate the pregnancy and all of that. Anyway, so this charity is really amazing at helping these moms and providing shelter for them. And also they have an outreach program to these moms who maybe still live in the community or live in an orphanage or live in a women's home or something like that. And so I'm really proud with what we've achieved because we just thought these moms just need education. So we've set up this this program where we go in every other week and we teach them about nutrition and we teach cooking and we teach labor, obviously, and we teach postpartum and breastfeeding and so on. And then we've also lined up doulas to support these moms one-on-one because they're on the bottom shelf, you know, they don't have the means that our expat clients have. They really need every support that they can get. And to have built that up in the last 7 years, I think we've made a really big difference to these moms. And so that's one of the things that really warms my heart every single time I think about it, because there couldn't be people who are needier than these moms. And to be able to be there for them is just something really beautiful that I'm so grateful for.
Yes, this is really beautiful. Absolutely. And thank you for sharing, because I believe that we could do so much more in such a space, right, to help others.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really, really beautiful to hear that you are actually doing it and not just talking about it.
Yeah.
Yes. So, which leads me now a little bit more to the last question. I was wondering, how do you do self-care? Because you mentioned about doing night shifts sometimes, and sometimes birth is not just done in 1.5 hours, but it can take hours, right?
It takes hours, and it typically happens in the middle of the night. So, yeah, sleep is the first line of defense. So, sometimes I am at a birth for over 30 hours and don't get any sleep, don't get much food. So the first thing is always, catching up on sleep a little bit. Although I'm a crappy napper, I always say I can't sleep during the day. And then I think it's also more of a mental thing as well. I think I'm so grateful for my colleague to be able to process birth and be reflective every single time and sort of to really process what went on, to take home my learnings and so on. What could I have done better? What didn't go so well? And just talking about it, I think, reduces that mental load a little bit, because it's so easy. I think in the beginning days when you're supporting your first 10 births, it's very easy to sort of feel responsible for a birth outcome as well. And that can be a heavy load to bear. And so, thinking about it, reflecting and learning every single time and having someone to bounce things off of is really priceless.
Yes. And I understand that you have a really great community for that within your group of doulas, right?
Yeah. That's super important. And then, sharing learnings with the wider community as well is super important. But yeah.
My very last question, Johanna, for you. You have a full day for yourself. What would you do with that day?
So for me, I would definitely be in nature somewhere. I mean, my happy place would be somewhere on a mountain in a meadow full of beautiful flowers and bees and overlooking maybe the ocean. That would be ideal, brilliant. And I would 100% be reading. I just love to read, and I can just lose myself in a novel somewhere and really live that moment. So I could read for days. That's the honest truth. And I really find the time to do so during the day anyway. So that's what I would probably be doing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time today. And it was such an honor to have you here, Johanna. We have been knowing each other for years now, right?
A long time, definitely over 10 years. And I've always been super grateful for the work you do as well. And knowing that you have such a niche. I think your knowledge in fertility and how to support these clients is just amazing. And I love to have that support for my clients myself as well. Because you've seen we have so many clients. I mean, primary infertility, yes, but secondary is big, and we have so many moms. I haven't even talked about bumpwise.
Yes, you should. Please.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, so you asked me how bumpwise came about, and it was really, it was a funny thing because I sort of fell into that as well. I moved to the East and I figured out that at the time, there was zero support in the community for moms, for young moms. So we decided to start a coffee morning. That's how it started, with two moms, breastfeeding, talking about baby troubles. And we created a WhatsApp group, and that WhatsApp group then grew too big. At the time, you could only have 256 people in a group. Now that's changed. So we had to split it up. So we split it up into different groups, depending on where the moms were in their pregnancy journey, or in their motherhood journey, rather. And so by now we have like 12 different groups, and some are quite specialized. Some are like trying to conceive, or mature mamas, or it's complicated mamas, or twin mamas, or preemie mamas. And so anyway, it's just grown into this big, massive community of over 2,000 parents. Wow. And the WhatsApp groups are not monetized. They're just there for peer-to-peer support. And yes, we jump in every once in a while when we get, questions, but the moms practically support themselves. And on top of that, we do the weekly coffee mornings as well, where some of them are on Zoom and some of them are in person. And so, I really love the community and how it's all come together. It was completely unplanned, but it's grown into something so beautiful that I just really love. So that is Bumpwise.
That is so amazing, Johanna. And when you say like that, you have these coffee mornings, it's also some are face to face, right? And some are on Zoom. Yeah. And are you in each of them, or would you like split it up with your colleagues?
No, I'm actually there all the time unless I'm called to a birth, then someone steps in, but it's typically me who runs them. Yeah, it's also in the East here at my condo most of the time. And yeah, we want to give back to the community a little bit. We want to offer these moms what they need, and we don't want to ask them for money, or, we're not going to build an empire on their backs. But it's just so important that these moms know what they're going through, that they have people who are in the same boat. They don't feel so alone, because motherhood can be a very lonely journey, I have to say, especially if it's your first and you were an accomplished career woman, and now you're sat there. And I speak from my own experience. You're sat there and all you do is breastfeed and change nappies, and you have no adult conversations anymore. It's a big change, matrescence, right? And so you want to feel well supported on that journey. So that's what we're trying to do with the Bumpwise community.
Yes. And I remember, actually, I didn't, back then when I had my first one, I didn't have Bumpwise, but I think I remember very well how it was like a real big thing to have your newborn and going to the 1 month checkup with your newborn, right? By taxi. So it was a big thing in my head to get over it. Totally. So I think it's also fantastic to get like all these practical tips from the mamas in your group and from you as well, to help each other. Absolutely.
Really,
and
really.
The friendship that comes from it. It's so beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. Yeah, that's true.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're most welcome.
And we shall put that actually into the link as well, so that people can reach out. Yes.
That's fantastic.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Johanna.
I was super happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Fertility Counselor podcast. Remember, you are not alone on this journey. If you need support or have any questions, reach out to us via email at inquiries@counselingconnects.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media @Fertility Connects. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to learn more about us and the services we offer, head to www.fertilityconnects.com. And if you're looking for support beyond fertility, visit www.counselingconnects.com. Take care, and we'll see you in the next episode.